Who is Jungkook's ideal partner based off what we can see in his hands? In this video, I'm going to be revealing the key characteristics, traits, and personality aspects, the flaws and the strengths in Jungkook's hand to provide a greater idea as to the ideal partner, as to who would make his ideal partner. And straight away, I can tell you that if you have a square palm and long fingers, a lot like what we see here, because that's the impression his hand gives here, and actually that's not quite right, because he actually has a long palm and short fingers. It's deceptive because when you look at this image in particular, you can see this. That's because this image is taken flat on. The angle's perfect. The palm itself is long and the fingers are short. Now, if you have a square palm and long fingers, you are immediately much more compatible with someone just like Jungkook. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, okay, I have a square palm, but I don't know if I have long fingers. They look long. The way you determine this, and this is the way I also determine whether or not someone has short fingers, is by measuring the longest finger, the Saturn finger, against the length of the entirety of the palm. Now, if your middle finger, your Saturn finger, is 7/8 of your palm's length or longer, then you know you have long fingers. So if this is you, immediately you are someone who is absolutely much more compatible with someone like Jungkook. Air hands, if that is you, are highly interested in absorbing as much information as possible. They have a thirst for knowledge, ideas, concepts, debate. They are highly philosophical. They love exploration in all things conceptual, which is why they're in constant, there's a constant absorption of information. Now, fire hands are much more social and expressive um, in vibration. Now, I mean that in the way that they are often singers, they're often dancers, they inspire, dazzle, they literally light up the room. Fire is something we've been obsessed with since we discovered it, and fire hands know how to impress and inspire, and they utilize their talents in this way. So, in this way, young Cook, his ideal partner would really be someone who, they would feed, he would feed off of their thirst for knowledge and find that fascinating and learn from someone who is highly academic, highly gifted in that ability to absorb information and that need to and that drive to want to find out more and explore, and not just in concept but in travel as well. Air hands often are big travelers, and all the qualities that the air hand doesn't have are likewise inspired by, and their life in turn is enhanced by all of those traits that they don't have. So there's that kind of symbiosis, and that's what really creates that compatibility. Now, it's not quite that simple because there are some very complex key markers seen in his hands. Now, if you've watched my palm reading video on Young Cook, there was a mistake in that, annoyingly, so I probably will have to remake that. But I'm kind of making this video to make up for some of that. You will have noticed that there is a Simian line in his left and right hand. Now, only around about 1% of people in the world have this. It's very unlikely. It's very rare to have a Simian line in both the left and the right hand. And this is no coincidence as to why he is so loved, why he is so successful, why he's so driven, and why he is so passionate. And that passion comes through this fire element is enhanced, I suppose. All of the positive aspects of his uh, fire in his hand, I suppose, because you could liken the fire element to this finger, Apollo, because it is all things that dazzle us, its abilities, its talents, its reputation, its glory. And this finger is long as well. And the tip of it is kind of it's well developed. It's spatulate, so there's a great amount of energy here. So he's physically utilizing his talents and creating. He wants to see tangible results through his efforts. He is a furiously dedicated hard worker. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. But Likewise, he's going to want to see the same sorts of qualities in an ideal partner, but not the same qualities. His Simian lines create, as you will know if you watch my other video, there's certainly a propensity towards jealousy, towards possessiveness, and a great sense of control as well. And so there is this kind of a very dominating aspect about him. And at times, an inability to really kind of separate and compartmentalize his executive sort of decision making from his emotionality. The two are fused, the two are one. When he makes a decision, it is with both heart and mind, which means that at times there's a difficulty in really separating the two. It means when he becomes upset and angry, there is a potential to say things, to do things which he might regret, which he might not mean, but that there's a complete fusion there. And that's where this intensity comes from. That's where that passion comes from. So it is. What do you think, Loki? He's got something to say? No. It is imperative that his partner has exceptional emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, and really recognizes this intense passion is just who he is. And, the emotional realm here, you can see by just how low set this heartline is, and that's because the headline is fused with it. It brings the heartline down. It creates a greater capacity for feeling. The overall capacity in the palm seen here for feeling, for emotions is heightened, for sensitivity, for love. The heart here is a big part of who he is. One of the negative effects of this is it creates at times a completely kind of subjective point of view. And again, that's because the mind and the heart are as one. So a person who is very able to, in a very grounded, a very rational approach, which is a very air hand trait, to debate, again in a very air hand debate trait, to bring down and to really help someone like Jungkook recognize other factors, possibilities, concerns, other variables at play, but do it in a way that doesn't stifle, condone, or patronize. The ideal partner for Jungkook would be someone who is exceptionally honest, transparent, an exceptional communicator, someone who is very gifted with and very articulate, very able to um, speak their thought and and really kind of diffuse and negotiate, really strong negotiating skills, highly diplomatic. For someone like Young Cook, having a Simuline on both hands means that he, as I've mentioned, there is that propensity towards a possessive nature, but he becomes possessed himself when he falls in love. He's either completely and utterly enamored with someone, or he's completely against them. There's no two ways about it. And so in this way, he is utterly vulnerable when it comes to matters of the heart. He is utterly at risk of hurt when falling in love because it's important that he falls in love with the right person. People with a Simuline on both hands can sometimes become this all-absorbing um, entity within the relationship, and sometimes they can, I think, without realizing it's almost kind of try and absorb their partner into themselves because they want them, they need them, they feel them, they have to have them, just and again, it takes someone who is highly able to separate themselves in and really see their own situation for what it is in the moment that they are potentially actually too close to, and really I feel that someone who is highly gifted in terms of knowledgeable in terms of psychology, someone who's highly patient, these are absolutely ideal characteristics. It might seem silly to kind of say because it should be a given, but someone, his ideal partner needs to be utterly devoted to him and never look at another person. be completely and utterly aligned with his aims, and be extremely understanding of his flaws. That is essentially um, the crux of it. Now, are you someone who is massively into psychology? Do you have an affinity, an aptitude for understanding the human condition? Sociology, anthropology, psychology, philosophy, all of these subjects, if you have a fascination in these, then you may well be an airhand. And it is likely that you are much more compatible than you had realized with someone like Jungkook, with Jungkook himself. So, the other things that would really significantly be ideal in terms of compatible partner for Jungkook is having those shared views, having those shared priorities, those core principles, those values. Now, where I see this is a great deal in the Saturn finger because it is actually quite high. Now, the Saturn finger is not long, or it's not altogether long, but it is high up there. So the Saturnian principles are also quite high. Now, R is reliability, security, home, traditional values, duty, destiny, societal contribution, ethics, morality. Are these things are they really up there in your terms of your core principles? Security is a really big one. And that's you could use that term really broadly, security in all aspects, particularly within the relationship itself, but within how you conduct yourself as well. Young Cook requires someone who is immensely confident in what they say and how they say it. Someone who really needs to be able. He really requires someone who needs to be able to know themselves and and just be a superb speaker and really um, provide for him in a way that he can't for himself. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is bring to his table what he can't so much for himself, and that's how we complement each other in relationships. That's how we are compatible for each other when we kind of bless each other and enhance each other's lives. I think someone with a strong sense of routine and order, structure, a good sense, an equal sense of timing, in fact. This the immensely strong angle that we see on his thumb here is known as the angle of time or angle of proficiency. Now, obviously, he's got an immense sense of timing ability, but it comes with a feeling of structure and order as well, and that's really tied to a sense of security, familiarity. These things provide a sense of comfort and ultimately, if those same shared aims, values are exhibited in someone else, and he sees that, he feels that, he gets a strong, confident sense of that, he's going to find that really appealing. And as I say, someone who really knows themselves, is really confident about themselves, and can really articulate their emotions and completely compartmentalize their thoughts from their feelings. You know, I think that's something again that he would find very appealing because these are aspects of himself that he is not. Um, these are areas where he's not as gifted, not as strong. So these are going to be areas that he's going to kind of gravitate towards and be inspired by. And in turn, who isn't inspired by what he can do? So if you'd like to know what an air hand looks like, here's one right here. Many palm readers, especially the logical type of palm readers, are air hands. Now, another trait that would significantly, um, I would say, be a significant key compatibility marker in the hands is a forking headline. Now, if you have this, and you have that high set middle finger, and you have square palm and long fingers, then you are significantly compatible with Jungkook, in my opinion. And that is because the forking headline, this little, if you've got a little kind of fork coming off it, if it divides at the end, This shows someone who has an exceptional ability to see things from more than one perspective. It creates some indecision. It can mean that you kind of sit on the fence a little bit in terms of debate, which is something that you're no stranger to. But it also means you do twice the homework because you have to see things from more than one perspective at all times. You're so um, almost driven towards seeing every perspective, from understanding every angle, from looking at things holistically, that you have, you know, you absorb twice the information in a way. You see things from two angles at the same time all the time. It is known as the writer's fork because when a writer creates a novel and they're creating characters, rich three-dimensional characters, they need to see things from more than one perspective. They need to put themselves in their character's shoes. And this is essentially a key sign seen in writers, seen in psychologists. Now, I've already mentioned how a psychologist is a perfect match, someone in that kind of field for Jungkook, and it's always seen in the hands of method actors as well, always. Now, um, funnily enough, again, I have this, and I have been an actor, I have written, and I'm obsessed with psychology. Not that I'm interested in Jungkook at all, but anyway, if you have this uh, key mark, key marker in your hand, this is a huge signifier towards that extra compatibility towards Jungkook. And in fact, if you have all of the signs I've mentioned so far, I would say you are certainly someone who is very compatible. I think, and this is actually quite important as well. I'm just going to be real here. It's probably imperative that whoever, in terms of having a long-lasting relationship, to mitigate from any of those kind of communication breakdown, communication errors in relationships with Young Cook. Uh, a low set Mercury finger wouldn't be a good choice. And like Young Cook, he has a relatively high set Mercury finger. And this is someone he would need to be with someone who equally has this kind of high set Mercury finger. It's not as common as you might think, and it certainly it creates that security that he needs, and again that emotional articulative ability. It creates an expressive, an outgoing expressive quality that I think is something that he would need to have, to see and be around in a relationship, in a close loving relationship. So I think that is actually quite a significant um, Palmer feature. And this last note I'm going to touch on is probably not as important, but I do think it makes sense. It adds up in my mind. Now, here is the lifeline. I've just made some little examples. Here is the lifeline, and here is the headline again. If you have this, actually, it's known as the mark of the tiger in Tibetan palmistry, a space between the life and the headline like this, it's a disconnect between the life and the mind's energies. And in some ways, it makes you a little bit impatient. It can make you rash. It can make you something of a risk taker, sometimes a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. And actually, I think he'd like that. But it also creates that, because of that disconnect between the mind and the environment, the way in which we live our life, it means that there's a real nonconformist approach. There's a completely unorthodox way of thinking, way about going about things. It means that you are very capable of coming up with ideas that most people just aren't. And that is something that he would find remarkably attractive. It's probably, I would say, certainly seen on the hands of conspiracy theorists. And it's absolutely associated with radical thinkers. So there's definitely a pro and a con here. There's no one perfect Palmer feature. There's generally always a strength and a weakness to every Palmer sign in the hands. And there certainly are, just as many weaknesses as strengths in this sign. That's called the mark of the tiger because it is someone who leaps before they think. Literally, that impatience, that rashness. And it's not necessary, it's always seen in the hands of gamblers. And when I say gamblers, I, a lot of people instantly assume I'm talking about money. We can gamble with so many things all the time: relationships, health. You can be just impatient and trying to overtake someone on the road, not for any other reason than just being, impatient and annoyed. Not going to get you to your destination any quicker, but you're gambling with your life. And this is always that sort of thing that's seen here. But at that same time, it absolutely makes someone think, and I can't stand the expression, but it's very relevant here, outside of the box. And that is something that Jungkook would find remarkably attractive as well. So do you have all of those signs I've mentioned? Are you an air hand? Do you have square palm and long fingers? Do you have a high set Saturn finger? Do you have a long Mercury finger, preferably? And is it high set? That's quite an important one. Do you have a writer's fork? Do you have this gap, a space between your life and your headline? And are you interested in psychology, philosophy, anthropology, sociology? Are you a keen diplomat? Are you an exceptional articulator, communicator? Do you have a tremendous thirst for knowledge? Are you something of an explorer? If you are all of these things, if you feel you kind of fit the bill here, then you are likely highly compatible with Jungkook. I do hope you have enjoyed this rather strange video, and I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you have all of these signs. Let me know what you think of this video. Please do feel free to subscribe and join as a member, become part of the membership on my channel. And thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you on the next one.